meeting for Tuesday, February 6th, no, today's February 21st, 2023. First committee is Public Safety.
Thank you. I'd like to call Public Safety Committee to order. We have 3 items on the agenda tonight. First of which is the acceptance of the State and Municipal Facilities Program grant by Chief Clifford.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm here before you tonight to ask for 2 things. They're connected, so I'll talk about both at the same time. We have been partnering with Catapult Games over the last 3.5 years to help them, along with the community, build a platform called VRPD, which is a virtual reality de-escalation training tool that has, again, been built by Catapult Games and the communities, with the community's input. The owner of the company, Catapult Games, Dane Jennings, has offered the police department a significant discount if we enter into a 2-year contract, and that contract amount would be $70,000. We had previously dedicated roughly, if I can find my paperwork here, what I did with it. We had previously dedicated a JAG award from JAG 21, $25,000, in the roughly $25,000 range. I think it was just short of $25,000, which left us a bit short for the $70,000. And from Assemblyman Santa Barbara had been involved in this development. He'd attended some of the workshops, and he had expressed interest in helping us. And he came through with a $50,000 SAM grant to help offset the cost of the $70,000. So our plan is to use the JAG funding of roughly $23,000 and change with the $50,000 SAM grant. You're right, $25,168 was the JAG grant. So we have roughly $75,000 in funding to put towards this program, with $70,000 going towards entering into an agreement with Catapult Games for the software as a service. That includes the equipment, and then the remaining funds we would use to put on the community events where we plan to utilize this training to bring to the community, to have the community be the end user on the de-escalation with the police officer, and then we will flip roles, have the community member see what it's like to have to de-escalate a situation where the police officer will be the person that is on the other end of it. So my request now would be to accept the SAM grant of $50,000, and the second request would be to enter into the agreement with Catapult Games for the $70,000 contract for the software as a service. Questions?
Thanks, Chief. Any questions or comments regarding the grant? Hearing none, can I get a motion?
So we do 2 motions.
Yep.
Yeah,
Just
yes,
for
he's
the
good.
grant.
Let's make sure. Thank you. So
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And then Chief spoke to both. If I can have any questions or comments regarding entering the agreement with Catapult Games, Ms. Warfield?
Okay. So Chief, we did have a discussion. Can you just talk a little bit about how Axon has some of these same capabilities, and what the what will happen after this money runs out, and the intentions of that?
Sure. We had entered into this partnership with Catapult Games, again, 3.5 years ago, and in that span of time, we recognized the need to replace our body cameras, and that's what brought us down the roadway of entering into an agreement with Axon. Axon's Officer Safety Plan was a bundled service where VR training was also included. When you bundle everything between the tasers and the body-worn cameras, effectively, we got the virtual reality training for free. However, we had already gone down the road working with Catapult Games, so I did not want to abandon that. That's why we're doing both simultaneously. We're using the Axon virtual reality training for a variety of different things, including de-escalation. However, the difference is that Catapult Games is built by our community, and it's also specific to de-escalation training with a 2-way user street, rather than putting the virtual reality on and just interacting individually. You're interacting with another person on the other side, and no 2 scenarios are going to be the same. So the plan we're going to use it for the 2 years, and we're going to see if there's a value in maintaining 2 separate programs, or if there isn't, then we will certainly have to go with the one that's free, most likely, which is the Axon one, if we don't see the value in maintaining the Catapult games. But we're hopeful for is that we will continue building it with Catapult and find value in it, because it is a local company that basically built this for us, and we're hoping that we see the value, and that, you know, 2 years from now we're back before you asking you to continue it.
Thank you. Any other questions? Ms. Becker?
I know that there were many, many community discussions. I know that Mr. Rivas, I think, hosted multiple events that the community came to. So it had positive feedback from folks that attended those events. Is that?
Yeah, Will Rivas was involved in it. So was Mr. Benitez, who helped chair. He moderated our police reform reinvention conversations, and then there was many other people involved in this, even from Albany, that were involved. So we have a more of a regional approach to building this, but we were the lead on it. It was really our community that took the lead on and giving feedback. So that I know that everybody that's involved in this is very excited about the program.
Mr. Butler?
Yeah, I kind of build on what Ms. Patrick was saying. So, Chief, I remember us sitting some time not too long ago with some young men in the Boys and Girls Club, and we were kind of talking about just this very topic. And I'm wondering, do you see this as a tool to, as more of an engagement tool for like some of the youth population, maybe some of the something that you would be applicable to the partnership that's in line right now with the school district, or do you see this as just, more or less the de-escalation tool that and people can just kind of get that experimental piece out of the community member?
On the police officer end, I see this as training, coupled with the engagement end. On the community end, I see this as engagement, and I really want to be able to reach every age group that's in our community, from the youth to adults to our seniors. I think that's important for everybody to understand the challenges that we as police officers face, especially the de-escalation challenges. But also we want to learn from all of those 3 different groups what it's like to have to practice different skills on de-escalation. And I'm not going to lie, I'm going to use this as a recruitment tool also when I go to the schools and colleges, and maybe even out in the adult community, to show that, this is a job that is professionalism, that uses many different disciplines to be effective, and it's a very rewarding job to have. So I do want to use it as a recruiting tool. We'll bring it to our recruiting events, but even when we're out there talking to our youth, to tell them to start thinking about a career in law enforcement.
Mayor McCarthy?
I defer to Mr. Farley, please.
Oh, sure, thank you, Mayor. So I was wondering, do you see this in connection with the hiring of the mental health professional that we approved last budget? Do you see like this kind of maybe like within their role? Because I'm thinking de-escalation, that might be something that falls within that wheelhouse.
Sure, and that's the beauty of this, is that that professional or anybody that has experience in that space can sit on the other end of it and train an officer on the challenges. So there's so many different scenarios that can happen, but we could have somebody that just dealt with a scenario last night and wants to simulate that in a virtual reality training, that when you give these commands, they're replicating what was given as a way to just train on different things, because no 2 scenarios are ever the same. Thanks.
Mayor McCarthy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And again, people have to be cognizant of and keep in the back of your mind, while we have to be talking about policing and public safety tonight, this is applicable over a wide range of applications for training. So it might be the paramedics, it could be the Bureau of Service, simulating just interactions with the public coming in whether it might be in the city clerk's office or in finance or other areas. So it's part of the transformation in how education is done, not only where we're looking in the city, but in college platforms and schools. And so that we're fortunate to have a local company to work with The chief has been a leader in terms of implementing this. At the same time, we're looking at those options down the road, again, to leverage that so that the headsets, some of the equipment that may end up being purchased now through the police department, again, could be used in the fire department or other training opportunities throughout the city.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? I also definitely thank you, Chief, for the efforts that you and your department are making to broaden our awarenesses, both as law enforcement professionals and as community members, so that we can truly work together. So if there are no other questions or comments, can I get a motion?
I'll move it.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And the third item on the agenda is a call for public hearing to amend Chapter 186-16 of the City Code, fires and smoking prohibited, and city parks exceptions. Andrew Cole.
Thank you. Obviously, the council knows that the use of marijuana and cannabinoid products has been legalized and it's being regulated in the state of New York. There are obviously a lot of restrictions that apply to the use of those products, as well as tobacco products. New York State amended the public health law, state law, to prohibit potent smoking in public parks. Enforcement of the state law, however, is left with the County Board of Health. There is language in the public health law, though, that allows municipalities to adopt and enforce local laws to prohibit smoking and vaping, for example, that so long as they're consistent with state laws. Currently, City Code 186-16B states that no person shall smoke within city parks, but we define to smoke as being to burn a lighted cigar, cigarette, or pipe, or to use any other matter or substance which contains tobacco. So obviously it does not address, because at the time it was enacted, the legalization of marijuana and cannabis products, and also electronic cigarettes. So in order to be consistent with the restrictions of New York State public health law, to give our local law enforcement the ability to enforce those rules, and as opposed to relying on the County Board of Health, I'm looking to requesting a call for a public hearing. And as it relates to those definitions, relying on the definitions provided in state law as opposed to creating our own definitions, so that we're consistent with New York State law.
Thank you, Mr. Colden. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess the Corporation Council to put this on, I had a complaint from a citizen who was walking his dog. I think his name is Eric Clifford. Wanted to follow up on the citizen's complaint.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Are there any other items that are called for the Public Safety Committee? Hearing none, any motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Thank you. Call to order finance. And the first item is authorization for the mayor to enter into an agreement with Community Loan Fund of the Capital Region Inc. for $200,000 for small business assistance program. Can you take that? All right.
Good evening. So we're just here, completed our 5-day public comment period, which was required under the CDBG CV rules. We received no comments. So at this point in time, we're just looking for authorization to enter contract with Community Loan Fund of the Capital Region for $200,000 for small business assistance. Questions?
Any questions? Mr. Gray, the last time we did some allocation, can you give us a little walkthrough of did you receive any feedback from the community in terms of how the program rolled out? And were there any complaints in terms of people not getting adequate funding?
I mean, by and large, the programs, people were happy to get the funding we provided them. Last time we provided grants up to $10,000. We're going to discuss with Community Loan Fund if it makes sense to restrict it to that limit this time or not. Obviously, there's plenty of businesses that would have liked to receive more money, and there wasn't enough money to go around to all businesses that requested money. But overall, the business that received it was well received. It helped. I think we assisted over 64 businesses. So.
Go ahead, please.
So are you aware of whether those businesses or those folks are still in business or how they're doing at this point? Is there any follow-up process to that? to the loans?
We had been following up. I think much of that had been kind of done through Ron Gardner's office.
Okay.
I believe that the ones that I can think of off the top of my head that I know got the loans are by and large still in business and still operating.
Thank you.
Go ahead. So for small businesses who have previously received a loan, would that play into the determination of who is eligible for this time around in an effort to kind of like, cast a wider net and have more people take advantage of it? Or is it just pretty much, are you thinking that you're just going to kind of go in line with the same metric you used last time?
Well, so last time it was, you couldn't have received other sources of funding.
Okay.
So like we prioritized businesses that didn't get PPE money or other sources of funding. This time I imagine we follow this kind of the same guidelines. We would start probably with businesses that didn't receive money last time. We haven't, started soliciting businesses yet and publishing the program, so it's kind of hard to say who's going to apply, but generally speaking, we would start with the people that didn't get it before. And then, people still needed additional assistance, we would look at those applications as well.
Any other questions?
Move it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. The next item is the Higher Ground Worship Center, Inc., 801 Stanley Street, waiver of property tax interest and penalty. Mr. Martin.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
The Corporation Counsel's Office was contacted by an attorney representing Higher Ground Worship Center. They're a religious nonprofit corporation. They purchased a property in 2008, which resulted in a lapse of their religious property tax exemption through March of the following year. In 2009, this resulted in about a $6,000 tax liability, and the corporation did not pay it. So it was liened and is now currently in interim tax foreclosure. In order for the municipality to apply any kind of religious exemption retroactively would require state legislative approval. So rather than do this, the corporation has opted to pay the back taxes, but it now seeks a waiver of the interest and penalties, which amounts to about $17,000, $18,000 from 2009 to date. And that would bring them current on their taxes and pull them out of the in-rem. And they are wholly tax exempt now. They have been since 2009.
Questions? Go ahead.
Thanks. In good faith, and it shows up here on the next page of your packet, they have made a payment recently. Really, it was last week, I believe. So they paid a substantial amount of the total amount of the principal. Obviously, there's still some residual that they'll have to pay. Unfortunately, the state law that was enacted didn't cover this property. It was not specific to this property. It's one of those unfortunate things. And this is not a property that would, if the city were to take it in foreclosure, it's not, I don't want to say that there's no use for the property, but I think it's better served with the church.
Any other questions, comments on this?
I'll move it.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. The next item is allocation of additional American Rescue Plan Act funds for the construction of the Central Park pools, spray pad, and facilities. Mr. Wallace is not here. Can you take it?
We have Mr. Wilson, who is going to manage the project, and Secretary Associates Dan is here to answer questions, go through the process, how it got there, the bidding, and
Do you want to take the lead and do my work in front and
Do you want to start since you guys were here from the beginning? You want to sort of...
yeah, give us a total rundown.
all right.
Where we are.
That microphone is for the people at home, not
All right.
in this room.
I was going to say, because I tend to project pretty well anyway. Well, how you folks doing? Last time I was here, we talked about a project. I think it was in December of 2021. the potential for Central Park Pool. And we were looking at a concept that would be around $5 million. So if you look at kind of where the renderings were then to where we are today, there has been a lot of input from the community. There was a committee that came on board, looked for a number of additional improvements. Obviously, we've been dealing with construction costs. So we ended up doing a design of something that was more significant than what we originally planned on. But if you look at what we came up with, it's really a benchmark project. It's kind of a legacy project. It's kind of a once in a generational thing. And we were encouraged by the committee to make this something that would be generational, not just a pool, but really a destination. So that's what we ended up with. And then we went through the process of putting it out to bid, and we got bids back. And there's a number of challenges with respect to bidding right now. First of all, there's a number of issues with construction costs. There's issues with respect to some of the requirements for the city, which can be a challenge, and it scared some bidders away. But we worked very hard to get bidders in. And we ended up with bid prices, working with Tom and TWA from Schenectady, to get a project that we could wrap our heads around that was, I think, around, is it $9 million with contingencies?
Yeah, 8 million.
8 million?
Yeah.
So the project has grown. The project is bigger, it's more exceptional than it was before, but the prices are what they are. And I will tell you, in the business of design and construction, nothing is coming in where it's under cost estimated. So the challenge really is justifying where we are. And we had very highly credible bidders. They were thoroughly vetted. We came in, we're very comfortable with where the prices are. Tom's company is absolutely experts in this field of bid evaluation, construction management. So now we're standing here talking, and we're glad to address any questions that you have with respect to how we got to this point. But we do have bid costs that were higher than were anticipated. However, the project we discussed with you in December of 2021 is not the project we have today. It's bigger, and frankly, it's better. Any questions, please?
You just mentioned the new cost for the overall project is just over $8 million.
Yes,
and that's including contingency. What percentage of contingency are you carrying?
$8,021,000 is the aggregate of all the bids that came in. And then I think Chris put 8% on top of that for contingency.
He did put an 8% contingency.
But it's $8,021,000 plus 8%.
Plus soft costs. Plus soft costs, which I don't have that paperwork there. So.
Yeah, I don't have what the final number was, but there was an 8% contingency.
I don't have a package either. So.
Wallen sent everything to the council. Wallen?
Yeah, he did. Yes, he did.
Open for questions and comments that you may have.
So thank you for coming again.
Sure.
And I want you to know, I'm fully support the project, but I have to tell you, I'm really shocked at the double in price than what you originally came with. And you did mention that, so these are add-ons. This is not that it doubled in price based on your original design, but because so many things were added.
There's actually three things that added to the cost. First of all, the scope was increased. There were additions. And secondly, the construction costs are highly volatile. And third, our estimates are based on just no dealing with labor unions and any sort of challenges dealing with the city, apprenticeship program stuff that some contractors don't have. So that is a challenge. And so those things added up, and with inflation, kind of got us to $8 million. But the scope is greater than it was previously.
Go ahead, please.
Do you find municipalities that just go like kind of halfway or whatever, or sorry in the future, that they really didn't put everything out there one time and one time only?
Well, I work almost solely with municipalities throughout the state.
Right.
And what we have done historically is when there's a hard cap in terms of spending, you try to phase it. Unfortunately, this project doesn't provide itself to be something that can be phased. The thing we do with our parks is that the investment in soft infrastructure like parks always gets a very strong return on investment. Between 7 to 1 or 9 to 1 is the return on investment with respect to people coming to the parks. People tend not to regret the money that's been invested. You know, we frankly did a project a few years ago in Amsterdam, which was a bridge, a pedestrian bridge over the river, which no one could understand why it was there. It gets 250,000 people a year now. So, you know, if I were to, you know, I recommended to every one of our municipal clients when the ARPA funding became available to go for it, because this opportunity is generational. And the cost is greater, but it is going to have even a greater impact on the community with the final result.
Thank you.
We're very proud of this.
Yeah.
Go ahead, please.
I just want to say I'm very supportive of this project. I think that the expanded scope also, I think, in turn is because of some of the meetings, I mean, multiple meetings,
Exactly.
Which such a large group of community members were able to voice what they wanted to see as part of this project. But
Well-
the project, I was going to say legacy as well, but the project, just in terms of the numbers of youth served by this project are just going to be astronomical, especially over generations, as well as the youth that we employ.
Exactly.
To not only the youth that will take advantage of the pool, but the youth that we employ. But
Yeah.
the other parts of it, the road work, the parking, all those other aspects are going to only enhance what already is considered a jewel of our city in terms of how it will assist the other parts of the park, like the tennis courts, like Music Haven, you know, the other aspects of everything that so many people throughout the city enjoy.
You know, I have two responses to that. First of all, our most successful parks are the ones in which the community is very actively engaged. And this committee was very actively engaged. We met for a number of months on this, and there kept being things added. You know, we didn't originally plan on having a hill removed, but now you go up there and you go up to Central Park and you look and you go, oh, you can see a diamond in the background. Boy, that's beautiful. I didn't realize that was there. It helps connect that park. There's so many pieces to that park that people aren't aware of. This helps just bring people there and get a greater understanding of the other elements and activities that are available at the park. And I think this is kind of like the launching point for the park to be even more than it currently is. And the second thing I would say is, you know, it's just the opportunity to do a project like this is just, it's just really special. And I think this is something that can be generational in terms of the impact on the community and the youth in this community, particularly in that area.
So you did mention about community input. Are these individual community members or organizations within our community?
Both. It was Sutton, the Woodlawn Preserve had stuff. There were Boys and Girls Club that managed it. I don't think who else was there. Music Haven.
Yes.
Representatives.
The greenhouse.
Greenhouse.
Greenhouse was there, yeah. We also had the folks with the disc golf.
Disc golf.
Disc golf.
They were part of
One hole, two holes, one hole was relocated. The other was
There's a few that are going to be impacted, but fortunately they were great to work with. And frankly, the person that was participating from the Boys and Girls Club was of great value because we were looking to put these make it so it's user friendly for all the programs that they have, and so that's where we ended up with the ultimate design.
So just to be clear, I'm
So
sorry.
just a follow comment. I think if I'm speak for myself or speak for all, I think all of us support a new pool in Central Park. It's long overdue. But the thing that is getting us here today is the hard question of moving from 5 million to 10.1 million. You know, originally we had allocated $5 million, and now we're asking for 10.1 million. So those are the hard questions I'm asking you, and you're here to answer those questions. But my follow-up question to that is, if we were to proceed with this project, can you give us a breakdown of the timeline, the project timeline?
Well, I think, Tom, you might be the person to answer that.
Probably am. We would, if we awarded contracts, we'd start as soon as possible. Weather breaks, these guys are ready to go. And I think the contract, I think it's end of September is when it looks like it would be complete, and we don't see a problem with that.
Completed in September of this year?
Yes.
Mr.
Go
Midman,
ahead,
so
please.
does this include closing down the old pool? What happens with that?
Well, that hasn't been addressed. Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Tom. That has not been addressed, the closing down of the old pool. Right now, the geese seem to love it, but I mean, looking at a future use of it, there's a lot of potential things that could be done in that space. And it could be taking back some of it to help, have a more consolidated Iroquois Lake and kind of a great lawn there. There's a lot of ideas, but then again, ma'am, that involves going back to, a committee, getting community input, what the city wants. The most successful projects we've ever worked on are the ones in which the city is actively involved in the programming.
Well, I would 100% agree with that. And so the reason we're asking all these questions, we weren't apprised of all the additions that you're talking about
And
prior to
we're
us.
glad to be here tonight.
To us, so that's why you're
totally
asked to be here
understand.
tonight. So there would be an additional cost to do the work around the old pool. So that's not
Yes.
included in this cost. So if we
That is
what we
correct.
want to do with the old pool, then we're going to incur more costs.
That is correct.
Okay. So in terms of the things that were added, is there anything, if like, I know there was a wish list clearly from the committee who said, like, let's just give everything, bells, whistles, and then bells on top of the whistles. So if there, realistically, is there anything that we could really have done without and still make this a state-of-the-art project?
I think hindsight is always 20/20. But where the design is now, if anything were to be pulled out and a redesign to occur, it would probably take up half of that cost for the redesign. And then if you look at that cost in as opposed to 2023, if the construction is done in 2024, you might lose the rest of that benefit. So the way construction costs are moving, I think it's best, I think it's probably the wisest decision for the committee to go forward with this. Rather than do a redesign.
Yeah, let me just add in. Part of the challenge is the bidding environment and how the market is right now. And in order to do a substantial redesign, you'd probably have to go out to bid. You'd be looking at rebidding it. When you rebid it, it all starts over again. Everybody's seen everybody's number. If you, and I'm making things up, if you want to pull $250,000 out of removing something, well, you got to design what goes back, number one. Number two, we right now have the GC complaining because they're having a hard time holding their structural steel numbers. It's very volatile, very volatile. I cannot stand here and say if you pull $250,000 out, you go out to rebid in 4 or 5 months, it won't come in more, and you've lost part of it. So we had a project in Albany last year. The guy asked me, what is your advice on bidding strategy? I said, well, my crystal ball says bid it as soon as you possibly can and get your bids in, so that if worse comes to worse, you can bid it twice, which you do not want to do in this environment from our perspective. So that's my concern. And the other, and when you rebid, you have to, as I said, the numbers are out there. I stopped a long time ago trying to decide what everybody else's strategy is going to be, but I know crazy things will happen. So and I'll say here, we stand before you with some of the best contractors that we have worked with. We worked with Jerson on the pump station. I personally worked with Jerson on the Bureau of Services, $25 million, ahead of schedule, under budget. We know those guys, and all the other, there's RMB and I think O'Connell Electric, rock solid guys. So we're sort of comfortable, ready to go. We understand the questions and completely get it, but there's a catch every time you unravel, you start to pull the string, so. Agreed. Any other questions?
Yeah, the mayor said something about, you would explain about concrete, and that was one of the reasons that the cost increased.
Yes, it's, let me address that. That's one of, and I have a mark here, there's probably one of 9 things that were more than 20% up. I think concrete's gone up, I'm going to say 30 to 40% in the last 6 to 7 months. The Northeast is hit harder than a lot of the other parts of the country. We know that polypropylene, adhesives, the ISO insulation goes on the roofs is up. Gypsum is way up. Steel right now is sort of, I can't say it's stabilized, but it's volatile in terms of them. They're complaining that they're concerned about getting the steel, and they're pushing us right now. Like, we're counting the days for the award, and those, they got 45 days for the award, and we're going to get a phone call. Is this a go or not? Because they got the steel guys pressuring them. So concrete is absolutely up. Asphalt last year went up 10%. We expect it to go up another 10%.
Now, you said like this is really fancy and all that. So are we using concrete that's like above and beyond normal concrete? Are we going with any of that colored stuff and all of that? And does that include the cost?
Yes, that's. I think we have some colored concrete.
Definitely the splash pad area.
The splash pad area. It's not colored concrete is not cheaper. It's included. That is something you could turn it off and not do it without probably rebidding. You might save $20,000. It's not a wholesale change, but it goes in the right direction. That's for sure. If that's the concern. But the blue concrete is also part of the design. It matches tile on the outside. It's sort of cool, but that is absolutely something that could be considered.
The only thing I would add to what Tom said is, in this business, when like the stimulus funding started coming out, we kept looking for a point where it was going to ebb, and it was like, okay, hold on, hold your money, spend it now. You're going to be able to get more bang for your buck. We're not seeing a drop off in the construction industry. There is so much public money funding these projects. Unfortunately, we don't see it dipping. Probably it's as strong as I've ever seen the market. I know we're as busy as we've ever have been. Our advice to our municipal clients is try to get the project you can right now and move forward, because we don't know what next year is going to be like.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I was just going to say, to piggyback onto what Dan just said, it's the guys are generally big picture. We're commercial construction managers. We operate in Albany, Schenectady, Manly, a few other places. Guys are loading up on municipal work. The private work, they're not hanging their hat on so much because that's a little shaky, as everybody knows with the economy and where it's heading. So these guys, it's not their first clam bake. They know that they want to load up on municipal work, and that's what people are doing. So the concern I have, big picture, not for this project, for other projects, we have other public bids coming up, and that is get the bids in, get it done, because then these guys stop bidding it, and you're only as strong as your weak, your bidders list, really.
So to that very point, I don't want to speak lightly of it. And growing up as a kid, we'd get X amount of money to go to McDonald's, and my mom would say, you can get whatever you want as long as it doesn't go over this dollar amount. So I understand the consensus with trying to make sure we maximize the potential for this pool area. My biggest concern is, truly, if we are trying to stretch this ARPA funding, how much rest of the project exists, because it'll be nice to have a very lavishing pool area, but if we still have this other unfinished pool that's just sitting, if we have this casino building that still needs to be renovated, if the pathways and paveways still need to be addressed, what is going to be left that we are now responsible because we have invested this much money into to complete, or we're just going to have a half project?
Well, I can't speak on the city's budget. It was planned, but there's always opportunities for grant funding.
That's right.
And because we work with a lot of communities with respect to exactly that. Doing those, you can deal with SHPO, you can deal with OPRHP with respect to grants for the casino building. You can look with DEC with respect to potential grants for repurposing Iroquois Lake and the swim area. I think the thing to remember about what the Central Park pool is going to be is it's going to be a destination, which is a good thing, because the more people you have coming to that area, the more interest you're going to get in Central Park pool, and the easier it is for you to get additional monies for additional projects at Central Park.
Mr. Murray?
Just to piggyback on your question and just follow up on that. When we were having all these discussions with these community members and organizations, did we let them know that we have a budget of $5 million?
No, because we didn't go back to that original number until most of this work had been put in place.
And in fairness, you don't know what the number is until you get all the input and then you put the design together. So we didn't know that it said, okay, that gets us to, and that's the term we call value engineering. And what we wanted to do was put all the pieces in and then kind of see where we were with respect to the original guideline of $5 million. But as you can see, it's more of a project than it was when we were talking about it as a $5 million project.
No, understand what you're saying there, but at the high end, we take all the information, we take all the input from the community, we put them together in a drawing, we take it back to them, and we say, okay, this is going to cost $10 million instead of $5 million. Where do we stand? Do we just go with the community input rather than us coming to a compromise and a solution to say we have $5 million? Or are we just going to go ahead regardless and spend $10.1 million?
No, I respect your position. I absolutely do, because it's like, we got the community input. This is where the dollar is, and you folks have to make the decision. And, it's not an easy decision, and we respect that.
Go ahead, sorry.
So just say, I don't know if either of you are able to speak to this, what portion of the entire Central Park redesign will be remaining after we address this pool area and the facilities?
Well, a lot of items of connectivity are addressed because there's new road, new access ways and stuff. So you're really improving the connectivity of Central Park just by putting this park in place. It's not the end all. There's a number of descending projects that will come from it. None of them are going to be $8 million, but there's a number of other projects, which would probably be very manageable chunks to get funding for.
Including changing for tennis, so it's set up for changing.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's the one nice thing about this. The pool is it also addresses the need for locker rooms and restrooms for the tennis courts, which get a lot of use.
And if you had to put a number to that, would you say that's 10%? Would you say that's 30% remaining?
In terms of the other pieces versus, well, a lot of that depends on what you want. Because we don't have a broad master plan for everything to be done at the park. Because you can put a broad concept together, but then you want to look at these things piece by piece in terms of what does the community want here. Do you want an area for picnics? Do you want more playground area? Do you want more pickleball? Do you want other things? Do you want a skating area? Tough to do this year, but those sorts of things, it has to be addressed that way. You kind of do it piecemeal once you have the infrastructure in place. But we really think having another destination as the pool, which could also serve to benefit the tennis court area, is going to help activate that whole area.
And I think that you just cued in on one of the important aspects of limiting scope expansion for that very reason of we can have whatever we can afford to pay for. And absolutely, I think making sure this resource reaches as many people as possible and brings in more visitors and patrons to our community. But I want to make sure we're not overspending in this one area and then we're having to skimp to get things completed on the back end.
I really appreciate the position, but I can tell you frankly from my experience working with parks and communities, I have never heard a client or a community complain that too much was spent. They often lament the fact that not enough was. Wish we didn't cut this corner here, wish we didn't do that. That's just, I mean, looking back in hindsight, I've seen that a lot.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, again, we have taken these components. If you look at A Diamond, which you go back a few years, it was an embarrassment. Dirt field, systematically lined up the money, and I will tell you, I'll take most of the credit for putting that in place and making it happen. You look at the upgrades we've done to Music Haven. You look at the upgrades that we've done at the golf course. These are not routine municipal facilities anymore. They are entities that the region looks at. You look at the volunteers that go into the Rose Garden. You look at the activity that's happening at the greenhouse. We're setting the standards of things that are happening within this community and within the region. And this swimming facility is going to complement that.
You mentioned earlier about grants. This project might be prime for grants. Is that something that you can help the city with?
Oh, absolutely. I don't know if the city needs our help. The city's very good at doing these
You're
things.
helping us already.
But we really enjoy the relationship. We've worked with the city on a number of projects over the last
So
few
that's
years.
something you will engage with the city?
We absolutely can support that in any way.
I have a question.
Go ahead, please.
So, one of you mentioned the soft costs that weren't in there before. Is there a
Oh, no, it
reason?
just wasn't, it wasn't in the 8,021 that I mentioned. There would be,
All right.
that's hard cost. That's a total of the bids that were received.
Okay. My other question is, there's clearly going to be a lot of work that you've done here. You've accepted bids from the various contractors. In terms of your MWBE participation, what are your guidelines on that, and where are you with that?
It was part of the bid package in terms of the requirements. Each of the contractors filled it out. I can't recall the percentages off the top of my head, but we did have a conversation with the main contractor, Jerson, and Ron. And Ron has worked with these guys in the past, again, on the pump station. And I don't know the percentages, but they should be in the package. Each of these guys are required to fill it out. I think Jerson, I don't want to quote numbers because I've got 100 contractors I'm dealing with these days. And so, but they filled it out, and it was part of the bid package, just like their number for the bid.
So, Mr. Wallen did put in contingency for change orders at 8%, which is $641,680. So, do you anticipate, we've already doubled the price. I think what we're looking for is an assurance that it's not going to now increase more.
My crystal ball or no? So listen, a project at 100% design, you could go in with a slightly lower contingency, and I would be comfortable. However, this is a big earthwork project. As soon as you start talking about earthwork, there's no drawing that shows where the rocks are buried, and you can't do borings every 2 feet to interpolate, exactly what's going on. So because it's a big earthwork project, I lean towards, and I was part of the 8% decision, or not decision, but discussion, I should say. It's Chris's decision. I'm very comfortable with the 8%. Now, if the substrata wasn't really understood, I'd be a little more nervous about the 8% because it's such a big dirt work job. However, they just did the mass excavation, and it's generally sand. It's beautiful, beautiful soil. And so unless there is some burial ground we don't know of, and I hate to even say it, but stranger things have happened. I am not concerned with that 8%. I'm very comfortable going into this.
Yeah.
Very comfortable.
My experience, my experience is an environmental engineer. So I've done borings all around the country, and this was some of the most consistent sands I've seen. We were also involved with the golf course, and I have a high level of confidence because we saw it, that we aren't going to get any anomalies specific to the subsurface. However, as Tom would say, you never know until you know. And at this point, I would say confidence levels are high that we wouldn't get 8%.
The other thing I want to add, as soon as you ask me that question, I think about who the parent low bidders are. Well, the low bidders. They're all solid guys that we know can deliver, and we've had experience with it, so we're that much more comfortable. They're not change order artists, they do their job, and we hold, and we're there as construction managers to hold their feet to the fire. Our job is to protect the city against change orders. But with this gang, I'm not too worried about it.
And I knew there was one bidder that we didn't have a bid, you had to go back to the planners with that?
Yeah, so the general contractor, the plumber, the electrician, we all got bids. For HVAC, we got no bids. Okay. That affords us the opportunity to then request proposals. So our strategy was we requested proposals from the plumbers that did bid that also do HVAC. And honestly, we have a good relationship with these guys, so they didn't actually really want to bid on it because it's such a small package. They're bidding on $50,000 thing, and they got that much paperwork to do. So slightly reluctant. We enticed them to bid on it, and so the good news is the plumber that got the plumbing bid is low bidder on the proposal that was submitted. So it's the same guy, and that's exactly what happened just by chance on the pump station. And again, ideal. If you can have the plumber and the mechanical guy be the same guy, that is one big issue that's resolved. So that's really good news. So yes, good question, but that was accepted proposals because we had no public bids.
Thank you.
I have to leave as discussed, so completely the same.
So my statement / question is that how I'm understanding is that the project itself didn't double in cost. It wasn't the project that doubled in cost. It was the expansion of the scope, which then got us to where we're at for the most part, right? Because of the attitude.
But it's a contributing factor.
That and the market.
The market's
top
a big
of that
factor.
did not help on this at all.
Okay. And I believe Mr. Wallen was saying that usually there's a 10% contingency there. Or
it's not uncommon to go 10%.
And I think right now where my concern is that because this has doubled in cost due to the market as well as the additional labor, we have to make sure that we're paying really close attention to that. And is that why the 8% is there instead of the normal 10%, or is this just kind of?
Go ahead.
If the council awards this as presented to you, these guys are in place and they're going to bring this in on time and at least on budget, and I hope it'll come in under budget. And I expect that from Wilson and Saratoga Associates. They're ones that we work with, and we're all working together. Sometimes the discussions are a little bit more heated, but they're going to live up to these obligations, do it in a timely fashion, and within this existing budget.
I have no problem with that. And the 10%, that's not necessarily, I don't know the context of that statement. This is what we do for a living. We're the ones that we didn't put this budget together. We got involved in the bitter end, but it really depends. If you tell me the drawings are at 70%, 10%. If you tell me the drawings are at 100%, we're done and we're on the street bidding, you can reduce it. And then it's not a science. It's actually more of an art. You're like, there's a lot of dirt work, but the dirt work is this. Yeah, based on 40 years experience. 8%, and I'm comfortable with that going into this. I'm comfortable that with that sand and what we think we know, and solid contractors that aren't going to, we've just worked together. Last job we did that I ran with the city was Bureau of Services, and it was ahead of schedule and under the adjusted budget. And somebody reminded me of that, and I'm like, oh, I didn't know it was an option to do it otherwise. Now you tell me, it was a lot of hard work to get it done under budget and ahead of schedule, so.
Yeah, you definitely answered my question. I was just wondering what are the variables that are considered between that 8 and 10%?
Yeah, no.
It sounds like you're saying like once the more further along you get in the project, you know more, so you're able to kind of pinpoint that.
Right. And I'm, exactly. And it's very dynamic as you go. There's opportunities as you go that we could address as we go.
And you could address that it might be becoming much, much less as we go, right?
Well, we know which way you want it to head, and that's our game. We have a certain fee. What I like to do at the end of the game, we keep score. We keep score. Every change order, we keep score, and at the end of the day, we like to walk in and say, see, this is how much we saved.
Yeah.
And so that is our game. And we're again working hopefully with guys and gals that we can work with as we go forward on this.
So I'd say, assuming the chairship for this committee, just being very candidly, I appreciate both of you being present and the work that your teams have done. I would say before I feel comfortable voting in favor of moving these monies, I would like to hear from our city engineer, especially from an understanding of wanting to recognize what aspects of the entire project still exist. And as you mentioned, there are some grant opportunities still existing.
Where is he? Get him on the phone.
He's on vacation.
Well,
Yeah, he's on vacation.
Delaying the project unnecessarily.
Well, see if you can get him on the phone.
Seriously, let's try.
The challenge is we're down to that
Seriously.
45 days and we start losing contractors.
Oh, Carl,
What is the
Mr. Williams?
45 day?
What is the
Steel,
45 day?
steel.
And
I thought it was like tomorrow. I don't know. We haven't,
I think it's-
but we were tracking the 45 days. It's,
So for me, I just want to make sure that it comes in on September 2023, that we're there.
yeah, we brought Wilson, Tom's team in because Saratoga recommended that TWMA be brought in specific for what they add in construction management and value engineering, because we've worked with them and they absolutely watch every penny that's spent and make sure it's spent wisely. And we thought that was in the best interest of the city.
Gotcha. So I'd say before I was cut off, I think the rest of my comment was going to be, would that pose any continued issues with the funding of the rest of the project? So if you're saying that 45 days is already spent up, is that what I'm hearing?
well, what happens is bids come in, right? And the contractors, they have to hold their bid for 45 days.
Right.
And then after that 45 days, if you don't award, they get to decide. And we already know that Jerson was concerned that their steel guy wouldn't hold their numbers because it's very volatile. So I'm not feeling very comfortable that,
I remember, the question was, what day are we in? I know the question was, what day are we in? So I know we're really close to the 45 days, and putting it out 2 weeks would bring us well.
It's the 26th.
7th? 6th is a Sunday, right?
Right, but that's when the 45 days comes up.
Would they give us one more day if we did it?
It's, at some point we'll get Wallen on the phone, be able to answer your questions, Mr. Councilman.
Well, I think we had that, I'm sorry, can I ask a question? I think we had that opportunity to give our questions to Mr. Wallen. He let us know that he was going to be on vacation this week, and if we had any questions, given all the material that he gave us, that we were to contact him last week before he left for vacation. So I personally just have to say, I mean, especially given the level of community input over months for this project and the numbers of people in all areas of our city that will be benefiting from the use of this, for me, as chair of the Parks Committee here, I have to say that I would be so proud to be on a city council that actually approved this kind of project, which long after we're gone, not just as a city council, but probably on this earth, will still be enjoyed by the residents of this city. So I know I'm not on the Finance Committee, so I don't get to vote this evening, but I really encourage my colleagues to vote in favor of this project, because I just think it has, long-lasting benefits for so many people in our city, including water safety, employment, just health, hot summers. A lot of the kids that use our pool, don't have that kind of opportunity at home to be able to cool down the way that they do at the pool. So I just really encourage the three of you to vote in favor of this project this evening.
Ms. Porterfield?
What three are you referring to?
The three people that are on the committee, I think Mr. Williams.
Mr. Motivary.
Oh, I thought that you said that you were now the chair of the committee for the evening.
Assuming chair responsibilities.
Right.
Yes, and Mr. Mudavaren left, so there's only
Right.
two people.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought that Mr. Palomeni, Ms. Porterfield, and...
No.
No? Okay, sorry about that.
So let's say here,
Okay, so I just, so I'll say what I said when I started speaking, that I'm fully supportive of this project. And I just want to be clear, it wasn't Y community, there was a committee that was formed, and I have no objection to that, but I don't want it to be understood that there was this, we went from community to community to community. That's not what happened. There were representatives from community who formed the committee. So let's, just be clear with that. And I just really, for me, again, we did not have the opportunity to hear about the expanded project, this expanded plan, which is why I felt like I needed to hear more.
Sure.
If you see the dollar amount of the project, go from 1% and then it's doubled 100%, I think it's fair to ask for an explanation for that.
Understood.
So, which is, why I wanted you to come today to ask to get that explanation. So it's not about being against the project, it's about making sure we're clear, because we are making decisions, financial decisions.
No, you're fulfilling your fiduciary responsibility.
Just so that's 100% clear. So that's what I want to say, and I did send questions to Mr. Wallen, got those responses. So here we are today. I also am not on the committee, so I don't get to vote.
Well, I'm going to make a motion to move this forward.
Actually, before I vote, I think it's important to say there's yet again another instance where the council is being directed. I absolutely do not want to be the obstructionist or anyone holding up these efforts. I understand the investment that was made by both the community and yourselves, so I appreciate that. My hesitation again is just making sure we can fund the other aspects of it. But with the motion, I will support it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion to adjourn.
So I would say definitely it's making sure that as a council, these conversations are brought in real time. I imagine that would alleviate any of these instances continuing forward. Can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting? I had additional comment I didn't ask for, so may I have a motion?
Well, there was a motion, you were supposed to either not approve it or go.
Gentlemen?
A motion.
Second, all those in favor? Aye. We are adjourned.
Thank you. I'd like to call to order City Development and Planning. So, thank you. Thank you both for coming and
No, it's our
for all your
pleasure.
explanation.
We'll go swimming on the 22nd.
All right, thank you. So we have 7 items on the agenda. The first item is to, oops, I'm sorry. Government officers.
Okay, sure.
I recessed City Development Plan.
Sure, okay. So I'd like to call the order of operations. We have one agenda item, that's a reminder that amended to Chapter 161 of Schenectady City Code regarding the collection of white goods. Public hearing will be held on 2/27/2023. Any questions, comments on that?
I'd like to make a motion. No, I don't need a motion for that.
Sorry.
Let's make a motion.
Yes, that's just a modification.
Okay,
Right?
that's just a reminder.
Okay, any questions or further comments on that? Okay, hearing none, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn government operations.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Thank you. Now, reconvene City Development and Planning. We do have 7 items on the agenda. The first item on the agenda is to award and bid the contract for the Central Park pool, et cetera. We just had a lengthy conversation about funding it. So Mr. Wallen is not here. Is there someone here to speak to this for Mr. Wallen?
I'm more than willing to address any issue that you have or questions.
Are there any questions regarding this bid and contract? We just heard a very thorough explanation. Any questions?
I'll move it.
I'll second. All's in favor? Aye. And the second item on the agenda is to award and bid contract for the Central Park pool, spray pad, et cetera. Contract to MC to RMB Mechanical in the amount of $53,000. Yep. Second. All's in favor? Aye. The third item on the agenda is ceremonial recognition, ceremonial resolution recognizing Women's History Month. Ms. Patrick.
Yes, March is Women's History Month, and so as we've done in the past, I'd like to have a resolution recognizing that. So I'd like to move that.
All right, I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Item number 4 is going to be postponed. Item number 5, creative outdoor presentation on outdoor garbage collecting bins. Mr. Palomini.
Yes, last time we had a presentation by Mr. Diamond from Creative Outdoor about garbage cans to put around the city. It would also generate some revenue. I believe there was some question surrounding that. I did ask, and he said it all depends upon the cost of the ads themselves, but generally speaking, for the size of our city and the number of cans that would be put out, anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000 would be generated in revenue for the city. So we would have those cans put around the city, hopefully to deal with some of the issues in regards to litter. Mr. Colden and his staff looked into the legality of it for the city. He said it's okay.
Yep, just for the sake of discussion, we don't see any legal impediments for moving ahead with this.
And so, therefore, I would recommend that we authorize the mayor to enter contracts with Creative Outdoor for these garbage cans.
So 10 to 15,000 per year?
Yes.
And so they said it would have to be about 40 garbage cans, is what I would really...
I mean, I think that would be something the mayor would negotiate, but he said minimum 40, if I remember right.
And as I also understand, it needs to be in high-trafficked areas.
Yes, but I think that's also something that the mayor could negotiate with.
Higher traffic areas. Look at this, it's what I call some of the obvious areas. So you're going up Albany Street, Craig Street, Crane Street, areas of downtown, Eastern Avenue, Van Branken would be areas that they would be able to agree with us in terms of the best placement of them.
Well, for me, I would like to see a plan of exactly where they're going to go. And yeah, I would like to see a plan of where they're going to go. He definitely said high trafficked areas, and there was actually I got some information that was really specific about that, so they wouldn't be in residential areas. So I'd like to see a plan of where we would place these.
So do you want some in residential areas or not?
I don't think that it's really everything I want, quite frankly. I think that that's another conversation that is maybe could be out there for the public to have a discussion regarding. It's not just, what I would like to see there. But I definitely, if we're talking about high trafficked areas, I would definitely like to see where that is going to be, and do we even get to that 40 number considering that? So I would like to see a plan from this organization, and definitely some feedback for what they've seen in similar sized cities in terms of that. Before we 100% commit to it. Not that we don't have a problem with litter, we all know that we do. I don't know that this particular very large piece of equipment is ideal. So I would really like to see a plan on that before we move forward with that. That's mine.
I'll send your questions along in the email, and I'll see if he will address those. I will say that this goes hand in hand with the litter proposal program that was put forward and the council got behind. And furthermore, the garbage cans are free instead of using other resources that we could be using for other efforts around the city. This would be something that we could get for free and bring in money. So send your questions along and I'll be happy to try to get those addressed.
I'll make sure that I'll send them through Ms. Michael like we do everything, and then they can move forward. That's my concern about that, and I would like to see if there's anyone else that has any questions or concerns regarding this.
So I actually, after listening to the presentation, I think that it sounds like a really good actually opportunity. But I definitely would think that would be we'd see like kind of a proposal of where they would go. I think that's a pretty reasonable expectation. I almost didn't think that we need to ask for that. I thought that'd be something that would naturally happen. But quite honestly, I appreciate the information that was shared, and I think this is a good opportunity. I'd like to see that information to make sure that it's a fit for our city, and that the city residents are something that they would get behind as well. So.
Is that, that kind of a plan, would that be coming from the vendor, or would that be coming from the mayor and his team?
Honestly, I think how I understood it was you would enter into contract negotiations. The city would say, well, we don't want a can here.
Yeah,
we might want it here, and working hand in hand with the vendor. So I'm not even sure I understand what you're saying, but I'm not even sure that's even possible without there being some sort of negotiation to happen.
Correct.
Yeah. So I would generally expect that those conversations happen, and what I wouldn't want to do is say, if we agreed that we're going to get 40 something cans, and then we're looking at the proposed placement of those cans up. Now, there isn't enough real estate to do that in a way that is effective, and now we're looking at possibly these 6 or 7 cans, won't go for online or won't happen that way, and then we have, and then maybe this just isn't a fit for us or the vendor. That's why I was proposing. Again, this is something that I happen to agree and support, and that's why the question that I'm asking, I think is a question around how do we make sure that we have all the information clear, so when we do this thing that I think is a good idea, it's done in the best possible manner. Just trying to demonstrate how we.
So the council wants the final ability to reject garbage can placement.
No.
That's
not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is we definitely want garbage cans. Is this the best choice? And that's what I'm saying. So we clearly want garbage cans. Many communities, including mine, put garbage cans all over the city, so we know there's a need for it. Doesn't mean that everything is an absolute fit. So can we take a look at what that looks like? That's what I'm saying.
I guess then what would your proposal be otherwise, so that we could look into this?
What you brought forward was for us to consider this. And what I'm asking you for is to ask the folks that brought forward what their plan would look like for our city based on the size of the city, the high traffic areas. And if you would like to, for another vendor to come forward, I'm sure that we could look into that and have that happen as well.
I understand what you're saying. What I was asking is, what other proposal do you have? Because right now, this is all we really have. If you have something else, then we can look into this. And to expect them to come in and say, we're going to put garbage cans here and here without a negotiation just isn't going to happen, probably. Now, I'll check and ask, but I'm just asking you, what proposal or plan do you have? So then maybe I can look into that and see if there's something else.
Well, if there's other vendors, and generally speaking, when there's this kind of thing that happens, there are 3 people that you take a look at. So then this is not, I'm sure that this is not something that's a sole person that does that. So if you want to bring 2 others, which is reasonable, we could look at all 3 of them and see which makes the most sense for the city.
Well, if you have something with your questions to Ms. Maiku, please pass along a plan.
Thank you. Mr. Farley.
Yeah, I just think that we have to look at this, that 2 things can be true here, people, okay? And everything doesn't have to be, power struggle. And I think that what we're ended up doing right now is that I think it's a pretty reasonable question. And so two things can be true. It's a reasonable request to see like what this might look like in the city before we, move forward and enter into a contract. And we can still support the initiative because we think it's a good idea. We are more than capable of doing that collectively as a body. So my comment really is, let's focus our energy there. That's what we need to be doing.
No one's disagreeing with you on that, Mr. Farley. Ms. Porterfield indicated that there were some other proposals or plans, and all I was asking for is that, let us know, and maybe we can look into it. That's all that was said. It wasn't anything about trying not to bring forward a plan of where cans might go. There was a comment made about other plans. So if there's something else out there or other proposals, let us know so that we can try to work on that. That's all it was.
Right. I understood the question to be around the plan that's existing in front of us.
That was the question.
That's how I understood it. But in that energy and in that spirit, pretty solid, reasonable question, and does not mean that that there's an opposition to the plan. So.
And I didn't say there were other proposals. I simply asked for a outline of what this one would look like. So just to make sure we're 100% clear. You did bring up the point that there could be others, and if we want to bring up others in, we certainly can do that as well. It was not an objection to the plan, just what it's going to look like. So we can bring that back. I will make sure I have my questions moved forward to Ms. Maiku so that they can be answered by this vendor, and perhaps if there's other vendors who may want to have an interest in this. And then we can bring this back. Mr. Powell, would you like it back in 2 weeks?
Yeah.
Then we'll bring it back in 2 weeks. The next item is discussion of abandonment and sale of Larch Street. Mr. Brown.
Thank you. This discussion item is about the abandonment and the sale of Larch Street. Larch Street is a small street that's located between 633 and 651 Lansing Street. We, in the past, have received multiple complaints regarding people attempting to dump trash on the land that we own that is at the end of Larch Street. And our city staff has addressed it multiple times. The owners at 633 Lansing Street, as well as the owners at 651 Lansing Street, have approached the city about potentially purchasing it. In order for that to occur, we would have to abandon that in order to create it as a parcel to sell. One of the owners at 633 Lansing Street would need a portion of that land if it were to be parceled off in order to access his garages. And the other owner would like to use the additional space to provide parking for the tenants at that location at 651 Lansing.
Any questions? Mr. Colden?
I just want to add a little bit more to this. I had a chance to meet with the owners, with Mr. Brown. This is one of those, there's nothing really to move today, it's just a discussion item, because we can't even start the abandonment process until we have a survey. These owners have agreed to pay all the costs to the city for preparing the survey, which is going to run them over $1,000, I'm going to guess, just based on the size of this area of street the city would be potentially abandoning. They would also agree to all costs related to recording any documents, which would be deeds. They will pay for that. So they're going to be on the hook for all the costs out of pocket. The issue that they had was they wanted, before they went to go pay for a survey to start this process and then bring it to the council later on, they wanted to know if the council was supportive of this, I guess, mini project. I will say the street is not in the best of shape. We did have a chance to talk to Mr. Wallen about it. It's a very small street. There's really nothing fronting, this street. It's really the sides of both of these properties, as Mr. Brown indicated. The cost to repave this area would be, I think Mr. Wallen indicated, upwards of $200,000. Just for that little tiny piece, which nobody really benefits from. And as Mr. Brown indicated, there's a considerable amount of dumping going on there, and the city has put these cement blockades to prevent the dumping going on there. So the request today is just to get informal support to go ahead with this abandonment and this project to eventually allow these property owners to buy what would be abandoned by dividing it in half.
Thank you. Discussion from council members, any in favor, against?
I think we should support.
And is anyone object that we would support this request? Okay, well, thank you. Thank you. All right, thank you. The final item on this, on the city development planning is sale of 35 Moyson Street, a vacant lot, which would be in executive session. So at this time, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn city development and planning.
So moved.
I'm sorry, recess.
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye. So I'd like to open claims. There are 3 items on the agenda for claims. All 3 of these items need to be discussed in executive session.
Before we go in executive session, I
Okay.
have something I'd like to bring forward for claims.
Oh, okay.
Typically, we do personnel issues in claims. There's been serious allegations against Mr. Farley, we know that. It's incumbent upon us as a body. We have an issue of serious allegations against one of our members. There needs to be an investigation. And as our council president, calling on you to call for an investigation so Mr. Farley can have his name cleared and then there's nothing hanging over his head. Or if there's something found that's determined there's something either unethical or illegal, then that can be addressed. But I think it's very important for us to be transparent in this body to make sure that we have this addressed, and I'm calling on you as our council president to call for an investigation.
So I'm not sure what you're talking about specifically, but let me say this. Let me say that in terms of the consulting contract that was entered into, the school district was very clear that there was nothing illegal. It was not against the policy. They were 100% clear when they signed him, hired him as an employee, that he already had the consulting contract. There was nothing illegal there. So there's, and in addition to that, it's already been referred to the State Board of Education, who will look into it. And if there's anything illegal, it's up to them to make that decision. So that process is already taking place.
All right, but we don't have an ethics body.
Yes, we do have a board, an
ethics committee on this council.
We have one in the city.
In the city?
Yes.
Well, then I'm asking you to call for an investigation, have the ethics committee look into it. That way Mr. Farley can at least have his name cleared and we can move forward, because we are getting questions on this, and it's something that should be looked into. And while it is a school board matter, it's not a school issue. It's not a no-show job situation. This is public money. And then there's some other issues with perhaps taxation issues. That's something that is an ethics issue, and it should be looked into. And again, if Mr. Farley's got no issue with this, then he deserves to have his name cleared.
And I think that would need to be a request from Mr. Farley. And let's just also keep in mind that these things took place before Mr. Farley was seated at this council. So these are not things that took place as a councilman.
But
and excuse me, let me just stop right here. You started this by saying it's a personnel issue, it should be discussed in claim or in executive sessions. However, not in claims. There's no claim against Mr. Farley by anyone.
I said we usually do personnel matters in claims.
But yet you want to discuss this particular one in public.
I didn't ask for it to be discussed in executive session. I said it should be discussed in claims. No one's discussing whether he's illegal, unethical, or not. We're just calling for an investigation of whether he has done something or not done something. There's a huge difference there.
So just a couple of questions, because I think that this is definitely clearly something that is a tad bizarre that you introduced that at this juncture of our standing committee meeting. I think that that's pretty telling, Mr. Palomini. However, you say that the question around ethics and transparency, all information that has been talked about. This is all public information. I don't think that you can get more transparent than that. And I just, again, I find it kind of odd that you would try to interject this into this phase of our committee meeting. And you're saying that we, in the language you just used a couple minutes ago, is that we are calling for an investigation. And I would like to...
I'll say I.
Or you.
I'll fix what I said.
Oh, no, I just would like to be clear about that. And again, to President Porterfield's point, the school district themselves was pretty clear that that this was nothing that that's even alleged was illegal, and I personally did not violate any standing policy that that was on the books in the school district. So, with these things being said, what ends up happening is that there's an element to try to grandstand and almost criminalize. Well, there is. So you're saying, so I'm clear. You're saying that there is no element.
No.
Not from you, right? That's what you're saying, right? Because you can speak for yourself, right?
I'm speaking for myself.
So I will continue on my point there. So there is an element of that we've seen from the GOP in a strong effort to try to criminalize myself and others, around very significant things. Since I've been in this seat, there has been claims or hate mail to me, my colleagues. I've been accused of being, I think I want to make sure I go through the whole game here. I was a drug dealer, someone that would hurt children, now I'm defrauding. These type of things is exactly, to my earlier point, is what you call criminalization, and it is all political theater, and I just think that it's pretty rich from considering the sources. All colored people aren't criminals, and I think that we really need to deal with the issues in an appropriate way. But introducing this at this time, again, is another way to try to spin up a news story. No. I'm just speaking, spin up a news story, but the people of Schenectady didn't elect me for a positive story or a negative story. They elected me because of my over 20 years of consistent leadership and dedication to my community. And that's not something that is really going to change based on the criminalization of myself or any other people on this committee. So with that, I appreciate your concern to clear my name, as that's how you're framing it. I'm not really sure. I think it not only is it bizarre, but it's equally bizarre as it is really unsettling, and the tension is not lost on me, and I don't think anybody else was witnessing this in this moment. Thank you.
So this is not bizarre, because we usually do personnel matters during this time in claims. And quite frankly, when there's public money in play, whether we're talking about paying taxes or school money, which is public, both local, federal, and state, and there's serious accusations, and people are calling us and saying, what's the deal, what's going on, are there issues going on with council money or not? I don't know. I personally don't think so.
Excuse me, let me just interrupt here. I'm not sure. No, I'm not sure what the council money means, because we all get paid.
City council money, in terms of the budget, and that's what I'm talking about. So in terms
of the budget. Is this another allegation?
No, it isn't.
Hold on, you said that somebody
Okay,
called.
so
somebody did call and asked about that.
Then
No, wait a minute. Mr. Farley was right. I interrupted him and I let him speak, and he was right. I was wrong. I'm not finished. When I'm done, you're able to speak.
All right, and then we're going to end this conversation because, as I said, and I am going to interrupt you here, the school district or someone has already said that this is being investigated by the state school board. That's it. And if there's investigation regarding taxes, New York State Tax Department has an arm that does that.
So then as leader of the city council, you're saying we should not ask for an investigation of one of our members of serious impropriety allegations of public funds.
I'm saying those investigations are taking place by the bodies that are involved.
We are the ethics. Ethics is up to this body. So you're either saying yes or no?
No, I don't, it doesn't have to be yes or no.
I'm asking you.
And listen,
I'm
and
asking
I'm also
you
going
for
to repeat
an
again.
investigation.
There's already
And you can
been-
either answer yes or no.
My answer is,
You're offering a false
excuse me.
choice here.
No, I'm not asking.
Excuse me, you don't get to tell me yes or no. I'm telling you.
Why? You do it all the time
I'm
to the
telling
rest
you.
of us.
I don't think I do
Oh,
that
I
to you.
think
but-
you do.
Okay, it doesn't, well, that's your opinion. I'm telling you this, that there's already been, it's already been turned over to the State Board of Education. If New York State Department of Taxation feels there needs to be investigation, they will do that.
So then the answer to my question to you, from you, Ben, is no.
The answer to your question is, it's being investigated. That is the answer to your question.
And I'm asking for this, you, as our
Why
leader,
do we need additional investigations if they're already being done?
because this is our body and we're the city government and people are asking questions, what are you guys going to do about it? And if we don't investigate ourselves in terms of public money, then there's no accountability.
I disagree with that. And you can answer the people that there are investigations taking place already.
So then your answer to my question is
My
no.
answer to your question is,
No.
there are investigations are taking place. You will not put words in my mouth. That is my answer.
Because everybody can see what the answer is.
I think it's just important for me at this point to just really highlight the fact that these type of tactics are really, really like more of the same. And Mr. Palomini, when you introduce something into a conversation to say, you know, people are asking me about city council money, and then to say, oh, is there something going on there? I don't know. That is, again, another dog whistle, and you have been consistent with your dog whistles and your, really attempts to try to criminalize certain people that are on the city council, and I happen to be one of those people. Again, our business of the city is what I would much rather be wasting our time on, not wasting our time on with this, but really dedicating to that. Just like earlier, Mr. Palomini, when we're talking about garbage cans and trying to figure out where to place them are and get a clear picture of that, instead of accepting the fact like, okay, that's a reasonable question and let's do this, you try to turn that into a power struggle. You are clearly an obstructionist, and this is just you perpetuating that behavior. And I really would appreciate if you at least had the integrity and the dignity to just say what's really on your mind and stop trying to cloud it with people called me and said and I don't know and this, that, and third, and just really be who you say you are, because that's why people have their faith in me. Thank you.
You're welcome. But the integrity of this council is at hand. We're each of us, you don't like it, that's for you to dislike or not like. You want to talk about obstructionists, there's been nothing brought forward from many members of this council, but when they are, they're consistently objected to. And that is proven. All you got to do is watch the meetings. There's been a litter proposal, it's been all kinds of issues with specific stuff that really had nothing to do with the litter proposal itself. There's been obstruction of other issues that we brought forward. So we can talk about obstructionists or not, but the fact is there were allegations made and they deserved some sort of hearing. Now, whether or not they're true or not isn't for me to determine, you to determine, it's for somebody else to determine. That's why there would be an investigation. And you want to talk about dog whistles, you're the one that blows the dog whistles every time. Because it's distract and deflect from an issue of seriousness. And that's what's going on here. And it continuously happens. Every time something happens, there is a distract and deflect method. So with that, I'll be done.
Ms. Plank, Ms. Patrick, you want to move forward with claims?
I do. Yep. So we have 3 items on the agenda. One is Safeco Insurance, ASO Jonathan Miller versus the City of Schenectady. The next is Rahman and Pauli versus City of Schenectady. And the final one is Southside Development LLC versus City of Schenectady. All 3 of these need to be addressed in executive session.
Yes, and the reason why you want to go into executive session has to do with negotiating settlements of litigation, which is an exception to the open meetings law for the purposes of executive session.
Thank you. So I'd like to call us to be able to go into executive session. May I have a motion for that? Second. I need a second, I'm sorry. Okay, all in favor? Okay, so we're going to go into executive session.